Hey everybody, I'm Carl Lanning, Brazos River Charter School with This Week in History, specifically the week of September the 20th through 26th. So let's see what we have this particular week. All right, on September 23rd of 1869, Miss Mary Mallon was born. Miss Mallon, at the age of 15, immigrated from Ireland to the United States, specifically in the New York City area. Due to her culinary skills, she was able to find employment as a cook with several very wealthy families in the area. Over the years, however, she is believed to have infected 53 people and 3 died with typhoid fever, earning her the nickname of Typhoid Mary. She is the first known asymptomatic carrier of disease. Now, infections of typhoid in New York City were not that uncommon. The bacteria thrived in the filth of the slums in pretty much any large city at this time. But what brought Mallon, however, to the attention of private detective George Soper uh, was he had been hired by a wealthy banker's family to try and find out why there was a typhoid outbreak amongst his family. When he started interviewing others in the around that had reported typhoid outbreaks, he was able to find out that all of them reported employing a Irish female cook. Now, he had a pretty good physical description of her, but she would always leave about the time the outbreaks began, never left a forwarding address, so she was difficult to find. Uh, he was able to finally locate her when there was an active outbreak on Park Avenue. Soper went there and confronted Miss Mallon. When confronted, she became furious and threatened him with a carving knife, so he backed off. uh, a doctor tried to convince her to give urine, stool samples, and blood samples. She absolutely refused. Soper then noticed the New York City Department of Health. They came with the police and arrested her as a public health threat. When bodily fluid samples were obtained, it was found that she was absolutely crawling with the bacteria. So for the next 3 years, that's her in the middle, for the next 3 years, she was quarantined in a hospital not to be released until 1910. Now, this was on the agreement that she would no longer work as a cook. Problem is, she couldn't earn enough money doing anything else, and so she ended up going back to work in various restaurants and various hotels, and that's when outbreaks started happening again. She was arrested in 1915 and spent the rest of her life until 1938 in forcible quarantine. So, Mary Mallon, Typhoid Mary. Well, I mentioned this fellow to you last week, the man who everything Davy Crockett ever claimed to be, he really was. This is Daniel Boone. On September 26th of 1820, Daniel Boone died at the age of about 85. Look, Boone is the prototype frontiersman. Over his lifetime, he was a hunter, a trapper, a soldier, a tracker, a trader, an Indian fighter, and ally, alternatively, as well as a politician. He was also the discoverer of what was called the Cumberland Gap. It was literally a gap in the Appalachian Mountains between about the spot where Tennessee, Kentucky, and Virginia all come together. And it was literally just that, a gap in the mountains, which made it much easier for people to access the western frontier. He's largely responsible for the settling of Kentucky, and honestly, he became a folk hero in his own lifetime. Pretty colorful guy, too, to say the least. Now, contrary to the television show starring Fess Parker, Daniel Boone did not wear coonskin cap. He wore a felt hat, which would have been somewhat similar to that style. Allegedly, he told the story it was stolen by a wolf one time. He really liked the hat, and so he spent the next 5 days tracking the wolf until he finally found it and he got his hat back. Once he was captured by an Indian tribe who were a little upset with him for leading settlers into what they thought were their hunting grounds. Boone, he was held by him for about a month. Boone so impressed the chief, who had lost a son, that the chief adopted him as his son, made him a member of the tribe, and finally he was allowed to leave. Now, there is a section of a beech tree. This is now in a museum, I believe in Jonesboro, Tennessee, but it was carved where Boone had supposedly killed a bear. And well, put it this way: Boone was literate, although you could say that his spelling was somewhat creative. D. Boone, without the E at the end, killed, Cilled, a bar, B-A-R, here, H-E-R, 1760. So like that, you can actually see that. In 1799, he and his wife moved to what is today Missouri. He built this house. He continued to hunt and to trap well into his 80s. At about the age of 75, though, 1810, he said he got a case of the itchy feet. And so he loaded up his horse and headed out west. 6 months later, he returned. 6 months by himself in the west at the age of 75. When he returned, he told stories that people either thought he was losing his mind or he was just telling a tall tale. He spoke about a place where water shot out of the ground to incredible heights, where you could watch mud boil, and you could also see steam coming up out of the rocks. Chances are he was the first American to see what is today Yellowstone National Park. So, Daniel Boone. One of my favorite quotes comes from him, though, and any of you married ladies can probably relate to this. Daniel Boone once said, "I have never been lost, but I was once bewildered for 3 days." Most men might claim that too. Well, that'll do us for this week, but just to let you know what's coming up. Next week, we will explore how the very first one of these movies may have been the coolest one that was ever made. Thank you for your time. I'm Carl Lanning, Brazos River Charter School, and we look forward to seeing you right here next week.